Hey guys, tonight we drift into the murky, glowing fog of the Victorian era, a place where invention smells like coal smoke and possibility tastes faintly of lead. London streets hum beneath you, alive with the clang of carriage wheels and the hiss of gas lamps that flicker like fireflies struggling to stay awake. You probably won't survive this century's air quality, to be honest, but let's suspend disbelief for now. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, tell me in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is there. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The night hangs thick over the Thames. You walk along the embankment, boots slick with soot and mist, as the city breathes around you like a restless giant. Every alley whispers invention, men and women hunched over scraps of paper sketching contraptions that might make them legends or lunatics or both. The Industrial Revolution isn't just a moment in history here, it's a fever dream that everyone's catching. You can almost hear it, the heartbeat of progress beneath the cobblestones. A lamplighter passes by, his ladder clattering softly as he touches flame to glass. Each lamp he kindles adds another drop of gold into the black river of smog. You think about how recent this miracle is. Gas lighting, the ability to command light with a twist of the wrist. Before the century turned, the streets were dark labyrinths, ruled by thieves and fog. Now, London stays awake long past reason. Factories run 24 hours, and inventors scribble at kitchen tables until dawn. You peer through one window and see a boy tinkering with springs and gears. His mother asleep by the hearth, his fingers blackened from coal dust. He's not famous. He never will be. But right now, he's part of something enormous, the great human experiment to turn imagination into metal. Somewhere out there, a man named Charles Babbage is sketching his analytical engine, dreaming of a machine that can think faster than any clerk. You can almost hear him muttering, half to himself, half to history. If only the gears were smaller, if only the precision finer. Historians still argue whether Babbage truly foresaw the computer age or merely stumbled near it in the dark. Either way, you stand in that fog between brilliance and madness. The Victorian inventor doesn't just build, he conjures. He sees invisible patterns in the clank of pistons and the hum of factories. You pass another window. A woman works quietly under a single lamp. Her name's Sarah Guppy, though few remember her. She's designing suspension bridge foundations and household innovations while society insists she should stick to embroidery. You smile faintly. You already know the pattern: men pat, women vanish. But not tonight. Tonight she's here, ink-stained and fierce, drafting the bones of progress while her husband claims the credit. The irony doesn't escape you. You can practically hear your own modern sigh echoing across the century. A horse snorts as you turn onto Fleet Street. Steam rises from a drain, curling like a ghost's breath. Somewhere above, a printing press thunders. The air smells of ink and ambition. Newspapers churn out promises of a world transformed. Electric telegraphs, faster trains, new frontiers. Beneath the bold headlines, small ads beg for investors. Men offering their lives work in exchange for one last chance. You can feel their desperation. It hums through the city like static. You duck into a coffee house, warm, smoky, crowded with chatter. The tables are sticky with spilled ale and blueprints. A man with wild hair gestures at a half-built contraption made of wires and brass. It will catch light itself, he insists, and send it down a tube. You realize he's describing an early optical device, something between a camera and a fever dream. His friends laugh, but their laughter trembles with envy. In this age, even madness might make you rich. A quirk of the era, inventors often held mechanical soirees, inviting guests to watch prototypes sputter, spark, or occasionally explode. You can almost see it now. Ladies in corsets leaning too close to a puffing engine, gentlemen pretending not to flinch as steam hisses like a startled cat. The line between science and showmanship is paper-thin. After all, what's the difference between an inventor and a magician, except that one sends you an invoice? A sudden gust sweeps through the door. The lamps flicker. For a second, you think you see something impossible, gears moving on their own, papers rustling in rhythm, the air itself vibrating like a machine thinking. Maybe it's just fatigue, or maybe London really is alive. You step back into the street, the noise swallowing you. There's a deeper current under this progress, fear. The same people who marvel at machines also dread them. Factory workers whisper that steam engines eat jobs. Priests warn that humans are playing God. You remember reading somewhere that when the first trains were proposed, doctors claimed passengers. Organs might liquefy at 30 miles per hour. Still, here you are, in a city running on motion and contradiction. You pause by the Thames again. Across the water, a silhouette moves behind frosted glass, perhaps a chemist experimenting with phosphorus, or an inventor testing a strange gas that will one day be called anesthesia. The Victorian dream is dangerous, yes, but it's also intoxicating. You can't help but think how similar it feels to the glow of your phone screen centuries later. Light, connection, and addiction all in one. You lean on the railing, listening to the water slap against stone. Somewhere a bell tolls. Somewhere else a boiler groans like a tired dragon. The city doesn't sleep. It invents in its dreams. And as the fog thickens, you start to feel the hum of gears beneath your feet, as if the earth itself has joined the experiment. That's when you realize something curious. Progress doesn't sound like triumph. It sounds like a heartbeat, steady, mechanical, almost human. You close your eyes and the rhythm deepens. You're not just in London anymore. You're inside its dream, where every spark of invention has a pulse. The night shifts, the air grows warmer, and somewhere in that smoky haze, a man leans over a strange spinning device and mutters, maybe this time it'll work." The fog thickens until it becomes almost solid, an ocean of soot and dream. You walk through it as if underwater, the glow of gas lamps fading behind you until all that's left is the faint shimmer of moonlight on brass. Somewhere nearby, a gear clicks, a spring unwinds, and a man sighs. You've entered the workshop of a midnight tinkerer, the kind who swears he can outwit gravity with nothing but patience, caffeine, and a very forgiving landlord. His name isn't written in history books, most of their names aren't, but in your dream he's every Victorian inventor who ever stared at a pile of gears and whispered, "Just one more adjustment." His workshop smells of oil, tobacco, and stubborn hope. Metal parts lie in heaps across the table, labeled in spidery handwriting. Gear A, hopeful gear B, and gear that refuses to cooperate. You step closer. He's hunched over a spinning wheel connected to a pendulum which jerks, stops, and starts again with a petulant twitch. He mutters equations, checks the clock, groans. "Perpetual motion," he says to the silence, "isn't impossible, it's just misunderstood." Historians still argue whether anyone ever came close to the real thing. Some say the dream died with the first law of thermodynamics. Others swear a few prototypes almost worked before vanishing mysteriously, probably into bankruptcy or the Thames. The man before you doesn't care. He's lost to the rhythm of his machine, the hypnotic spin of his belief. You can't help smiling. Humanity's best inventions start like this, one person refusing to listen to physics. He sees you watching, but in that strange dream logic, he doesn't question your presence. Instead, he waves you over with a gray-stained hand. "Tell me," he says, "do you think the universe will forgive a little cheating?" You shrug, depends how loud it squeaks. He laughs, a raspy sound that echoes against the rafters, spoken like a true Londoner. He gestures toward a half-empty cup of tea, more metal filings than liquid. "They say motion must stop eventually, but what if I could make something that wants to keep moving? What if machinery could crave its own momentum?" You watch the pendulum sway and realize the beauty of it isn't in the motion, but in the yearning. The Victorian age runs on yearning. Machines that want to live, humans who want to be gods, dreams that never quite switch off. He spins a small wheel and the machine stutters to life again. It clanks in fits and starts, then suddenly hums smoothly, impossibly. For a single breath, you believe he's done it. Then a puff of smoke curls up, something snaps, and the whole contraption collapses with the dramatic sigh of an actor who knows when to exit. The inventor buries his face in his hands. "Back to the beginning," he mutters. You reach for a dusty book on the shelf. "Treatise on the Conservation of Energy," it says. Its pages are brittle, but the words gleam with authority. This is the age when science begins to crush myth under math. Every impossible dream meets a formula that says, "Nice try." Still, dreamers keep tinkering. You can almost hear the gears of defiance grinding louder than the laws of nature. Somewhere above, a clock tower chimes 3. The inventor glances up. "Time," he says, "is just another kind of machine, isn't it? Winding down slowly." He grins, weary but proud. "Maybe I'll invent a better one." You laugh softly. "Try not to break this one first." Outside, the fog has thinned into silver. You step into the night again, the air alive with unseen contraptions ticking in attics and cellars. Every flicker of light behind a curtain could be someone's final experiment or someone's first. You walk past open windows, glimpses of this restless generation. A boy carving wooden wings, convinced the air will hold him if his faith is heavy enough. A woman adjusting glass tubes over candles, watching mercury rise and fall like a heartbeat. A man etching patent numbers into the margins of a newspaper, terrified someone else will dream the same dream first. You realize how fragile invention really is. It's not built from steel, it's made of insomnia and hope. One false move and a lifetime of work turns to scrap, yet they keep building, maybe because every failure hums with the ghost of success. You pause at a storefront window where a strange device sits under flickering light, a brass sphere turning slowly on its axis, powered by a candle underneath. "Heat engine," the label says. You know this one, the Stirling engine, a quiet miracle of physics that few appreciated back then. It's elegant, efficient, and decades ahead of its time. Its inventor, Robert Stirling, built it hoping to make steam power safer after seeing too many boiler explosions kill workers. Funny thing, most people remember the smoke and the locomotives, but not the quiet man who tried to make them safer. Stirling died in near obscurity. His invention would one day power satellites and submarines, but he never lived to see it. You sigh. Some dreams are just scheduled to bloom in another century. The street narrows, twisting between leaning brick walls. The sound of machinery fades, replaced by the rhythm of dripping water. It feels older here, more primitive, as if London's bones are showing. You wonder what the Romans who built this place would think of all the gears and gaslights. Maybe they'd recognize it instantly, the same hunger, just polished with brass. In the distance, the faint rumble of a train rolls through the night. You feel it through the cobblestones, a low, steady growl that feels alive. The air tastes metallic. You follow the sound until the fog parts, revealing a railway yard where engines rest like sleeping beasts. Their polished sides gleam faintly in moonlight, their chimneys breathing lazy plumes of steam. Somewhere, a watchman hums a lullaby. You stand between two engines, listening. The inventor's dream, it seems, has evolved, from small wheels and impossible pendulums to machines that move mountains. You think back to that broken perpetual motion device and realize, in a way, these locomotives are its descendants. Not eternal, but relentless. The dream of endless motion didn't die, it just found tracks to run on. A rat scurries past, its tail brushing your boot. You chuckle softly. Even here in the heart of progress, something ancient survives. The rat doesn't care about science. It only cares about crumbs. You take one last look at the yard, the moon caught in the curve of a steel wheel. Then, as the air begins to shimmer with the promise of dawn, you feel the next dream tugging at you. A hiss, a whistle, a signal. Somewhere beyond the smoke, another inventor waits, watching the horizon for the moment his creation roars to life. And you, caught between fatigue and fascination, follow that sound deeper into the century's heartbeat. The whistle you followed grows louder until it becomes the pulse of the world itself, low, rhythmic, alive. The fog thins and you find yourself standing beside the iron ribs of a railway station, its glass canopy glittering faintly with condensation. Beneath it, locomotives simmer like caged dragons, their sides trembling, their breath turning the cold morning into clouds. You step closer, feeling the heat radiate through the soles of your boots. You can smell the coal, sharp and bitter, and the damp wood of the sleepers beneath the rails. Everything hums, the sound of an empire in motion. Somewhere a man shouts, "All aboard!" And suddenly hundreds of feet begin to move at once. Hats tilt, skirts swish, tickets crinkle. You're swept into the flow of bodies like a leaf in a current. The Victorian railway age isn't just progress, it's possession. It owns time, it devours distance. You realize with a jolt of awe that before this era, travel meant endurance. Now it means ambition. The world feels smaller because someone decided steam could sprint. You pass a porter balancing trunks twice his size, muttering curses that vanish beneath the hiss of valves. A small boy clings to his mother's skirts, wide-eyed, watching the wheels turn as if they might reveal the secret of eternity. In a way, they do. The station is a kind of temple, its altar a locomotive, its prayers the rhythm of pistons and gears. A railway engineer stands near the track, wiping oil from his hands. His name tag reads Brunel, and even though you know it's impossible, you feel certain it's Isambard Kingdom Brunel himself, one of the most audacious minds of the century. You've heard his legend, the man who built bridges that defied rivers and tunnels that terrified mountains. In your dream, he's both myth and mechanic, dressed in his trademark stovepipe hat, his eyes glinting like a man who's seen the future and refused to blink. He glances at you, half amused. "Beautiful, isn't it?" he says, gesturing toward a gleaming train called the Great Western. "People think it's about speed. It's not. It's about connection. Steam shrinks the world, every whistle, every mile of track pulls humanity tighter together." You nod. The thought feels profound but also slightly menacing. Because connection, as you'll soon realize, is a double-edged invention. The train groans, the couplings tighten, and the engine exhales a thunderous sigh. You climb aboard, finding a seat by a window that fogs with every breath. The conductor tips his cap and shouts something you can't hear over the shriek of steel. And then, you're moving. The world blurs. The rhythm of the rails hypnotizes you. The whistle becomes your heartbeat, the carriage your cradle. For a moment you're drifting through time itself. Fields flash by green, gold, gray. Farmhouses shrink into dots, sheep scatter like spilled buttons, and towns roll past with a sleepy indifference. You glance at the other passengers, a lady with a parrot cage, a clergyman snoring into his collar, a young couple sharing an orange in silent giddiness. Each of them is living proof that the world is accelerating. A century ago, this journey would have taken days. Now it's a matter of hours. Humans are beginning to move faster than their minds can process. Historians still argue whether that speed changed how people thought. Some claim the railway fractured perception itself, turning landscapes into fleeting images, turning people into observers instead of participants. You can see their point. As the train hurtles forward, everything beautiful becomes a blur. You rest your forehead against the glass. The vibration hums through your skull like a second pulse. There's something almost spiritual about it, this endless motion powered by burning rock. Steam is just the ghost of fire, after all, turned into obedience. The joke, of course, is that Victorians romanticized it all. They painted trains in emerald and gold, gave them names like the Rocket and the Flying Scotsman, as if they were knights instead of engines. But not everyone saw progress as poetry. Farmers protested the railways slicing through their fields. Villagers claimed the noise frightened their cows into madness. One local newspaper even warned that women might faint from the unnatural velocity. You chuckle. Unnatural velocity sounds like a great name for a metal band. Still, you can't help but sympathize. Every revolution arrives with a sense of loss. The more efficient the journey, the less you see along the way. The train jolts suddenly as you cross a bridge. Beneath, The river glows silver in the half-light. You remember reading that Brunel once built a bridge so wide people thought it mocked gravity. The man had a habit of measuring the impossible in feet and inches. When critics doubted him, he simply built taller, stronger, louder. That relentless ambition seeps into you. The motion of the train becomes a metaphor for the century itself, restless, relentless, unwilling to stop. It's beautiful and a little terrifying. You step into the corridor to stretch your legs. The air smells of brass and smoke. In the next carriage, a young inventor is showing off a small device to his seatmates, a pocket-sized contraption with a spring and a tiny wheel. It records time, he says proudly, accurately enough for navigation. You recognize it instantly. An early chronometer, one of those small miracles that made global travel possible. He winds it and the ticking seems louder than the engine for a moment. Someday, he adds, we'll never be lost again. You grin to yourself. Historians still argue whether he was right. You know that centuries later, people will hold tiny glass rectangles in their hands, guided by invisible signals, and somehow still end up lost in the wrong city. Outside, the sky begins to brighten. Dawn over England. Smoke trails rise from distant chimneys, blending with the morning mist. The world looks fragile and new again, as if steam has scrubbed it clean. The train slows as it approaches a station, a small village stop where the platform is half mud, half wonder. A handful of locals wait with wide eyes. For them, this moment is magic. The iron monster roars in, and they shrink back instinctively, hats flying off, skirts fluttering. You see a child lift his hands to his ears but still grin in awe. This is what progress looks like the first time it passes through town. Loud, terrifying, unstoppable, and weirdly magnificent. The whistle blows again and the train lurches forward, leaving behind a trail of steam and possibility. You remain at the window, watching the figures fade into the distance. You realize something quietly profound. The invention isn't just the machine. It's the courage to believe the world can move faster than fear. The rhythm slows, your eyelids grow heavy. The rails become lullabies, and soon the sound of wheels merges with your breathing. Somewhere ahead lies another invention, another sleepless dreamer. You drift toward it, carried by the same force that drives every human idea forward, motion that refuses to stop. The sound of the rails fades, replaced by something gentler, a low hum, a flicker, a whisper of static that smells faintly of ozone. You open your eyes to find yourself in a cramped basement cluttered with copper wires, glass tubes, and the unmistakable scent of ambition on the verge of combustion. The gaslights above sputter nervously, as if afraid of being replaced, and they should be. A man stands before you, sleeves rolled to the elbows, hair frizzed in every possible direction. In one hand he holds a thin filament, glowing faintly like a captured sunbeam. In the other, a note that simply reads, "Try not to die this time." Welcome to the birth of electric light, where every experiment feels like a polite negotiation with fire. He's one of many working in secret workshops like this. Joseph Swan, perhaps, or maybe Thomas Edison if your dream tilts toward the American flavor of audacity. In this version, though, he's both and neither. The universal archetype of the inventor who refuses to sleep until darkness itself is obsolete. The lamp flickers, steadies, flickers again. It's not the light that's difficult, he mutters to you, barely looking up. It's convincing it to stay. He taps the bulb gently, as though it's a pet that might respond to affection. Around him, shelves sag under the weight of discarded filaments, carbonized paper, bamboo, even horsehair, all tested, all failed. His journal lies open on the table, 2,471 experiments, none satisfactory. You whistle softly. Ever think of just buying candles? He smirks. Candles smoke, progress doesn't. There's a kind of holiness in his exhaustion. The light bulb in its infancy isn't a product, it's a prayer. Every sputter is a heartbeat. Every spark is a whisper saying, try again. Historians still argue whether Edison truly invented the bulb or merely perfected what others had already sparked. Joseph Swan in England, Hiram Maxim, Humphrey Davy, all chasing illumination in slightly different directions. Some call it collaboration, others competition. In truth, the Victorian age thrives on both. Genius here isn't pure, it's crowded. You wander around the workshop, fingertips grazing the cool metal of coils and the warm breath of running current. You feel the invisible hum in the air, electricity not yet tamed, just barely persuaded. It makes your hair stand on end. Careful, the inventor warns, noticing your curiosity. That wire still remembers the last man who touched it. You pull your hand back immediately. Good to know. He grins. Electricity's like reputation, hard to earn, easy to ruin. Outside, thunder rumbles. Inside, the light grows brighter, steadier. The inventor steps back and exhales as though releasing a century of tension. The glow fills the basement, washing the walls in honeyed gold. It's beautiful, delicate, and silent, a candle that never wavers. For a moment, the whole world seems to pause. Then pop, the bulb dies in a puff of smoke. You cough, waving it away. Well, that lasted longer than my last relationship. He chuckles without looking up, already replacing the filament. Failure, he says, is the price of continuity. You can't argue with that. Every generation, after all, burns out a little before it shines. The room darkens again, but your eyes have adjusted. You see other prototypes scattered about, batteries in glass jars, electric fans that look like octopuses having an existential crisis, even a half-built phonograph that hums faintly, replaying the inventor's mutterings from earlier that evening. Don't touch that, he warns again. It holds grudges. The Victorians didn't fear electricity. They courted it. There were salons where society ladies paid to hold mild shocks from galvanic devices, claiming they improved the complexion. You picture the scene, elegant women giggling as they're zapped in the name of beauty, servants looking on with quiet disbelief. It's absurd and endearing all at once. You wander toward the door, but the inventor calls out, "Wait, watch this." He flips a switch, and suddenly wires snake across the walls, connecting to street lamps outside the window. One by one, they bloom to life, white, pure, artificial stars piercing the London gloom. The gas lamps nearby seem to dim out of shame. The city outside gasps. People stop in the streets, hats tilted back, eyes wide. Some cross themselves. Others cheer. A horse rears, startled by this strange, silent radiance. For centuries, humans have feared the dark. Tonight, for the first time, the dark fears us. The inventor watches the glow spread across the street with a small, tired smile. "There," he murmurs. "Now nobody has to sleep." You feel a chill. He means it as a triumph, but you sense the prophecy underneath. A world that will never again truly rest. You step outside, joining the awestruck crowd. The electric lamps hum faintly, their filaments glowing like captured lightning. The fog that once made London feel ghostly now turns silver, alive with reflections. You hear whispers. Will it catch fire? Will it kill us? Will it make candles worthless? Progress always arrives with suspicion. You wonder how many of them secretly miss the flicker of gaslight, the soft imperfection of old illumination. You stroll down the glowing street, the air buzzing faintly against your skin. It's like walking through the bloodstream of the future. Electricity isn't just light, it's movement, communication, connection. Soon it will run factories, telegraphs, trams, and eventually lives. In the next window, you glimpse another inventor, sitting by an electric coil and staring into the spark with something like reverence. He's whispering in a thick accent, Serbian perhaps, about resonance and wireless dreams. His name isn't said aloud, but you already know it. The world will one day call him Nikola Tesla, though tonight he's just a quiet silhouette in the glow, listening to the hum of invisible power. He looks up briefly as if sensing your gaze. Energy, he murmurs, is everywhere, you just have to listen. You do. You close your eyes and hear the low, thrumming note beneath everything, the sound of the world waking up. It's soft, steady, alive. When you open your eyes again, the city's pulse has changed. The lamps stretch into the distance like constellations mapped by human hands. Gaslight has lost its empire. The future hums. You smile faintly, realizing you've just witnessed one of history's quietest revolutions. No gunfire, no marching armies, just a small bulb glowing long enough to convince the darkness to retreat. And as the fog curls around your ankles again, the dream shifts. The electric hum becomes a code, a pulse, a heartbeat tapping through the night, pulling you toward the next invention waiting to be born. The hum morphs into a rhythm, short, long, a heartbeat in code. You open your eyes again to find yourself surrounded by copper wires, clicking levers, and the faint smell of ozone mingled with ink. The air is filled with little taps and pauses, like the language of restless ghosts. You've stumbled into the world's newest obsession, the telegraph. The room is narrow and hot, lit by a single swinging lamp. Operators sit in rows like monks, each hunched over a small brass machine that seems to breathe in dots and exhale words. Their fingers move quickly, confidently. To your untrained ear, the tapping sounds random, but soon your brain begins to catch a rhythm. Pause. It's hypnotic, the first digital symphony of humankind. Messages from Paris, a clerk shouts, holding a strip of paper like it's a holy relic. Arrived in less than 5 minutes. His voice trembles with disbelief and pride. You blink 5 minutes. Not by ship, not by pigeon, by pulse. Before you can even marvel, a woman near the corner looks up from her station. She has the calm air of someone who's lived too long among machines that never rest. First time hearing it, she asks, smirking. You nod. Sounds like the universe learning Morse code. She laughs. Careful, that's how it starts. Next thing you know, you'll dream in dots and dashes. Her hands return to the key, moving faster than thought. She's one of the telegraph operators, a new kind of worker in this century, a human extension of the machine. Every letter she taps is a spark traveling through hundreds of miles of copper, hopping from pole to pole like lightning on command. Historians still argue whether the telegraph created the modern world or just sped up its chaos. You suspect both are true. You lean closer, studying the strange device. It's simple, a key, a magnet, and a coil, but the magic lies in its network. Every pulse carries a word, every word a thought, every thought an entire life flashing invisibly through wire. It's as if the world suddenly grew nerves and London is its beating heart. Across the room, a manager reads incoming strips aloud. New York confirms arrival. Calcutta delayed by storm. Cairo requests more copper wire. The entire globe now whispers in rhythm, and everyone's listening. A quirky tidbit floats to your mind. Early telegraph users once sent entire love letters this way, paying by the word. You imagine the romance. Stop. Think of you daily. Stop. Miss your tea. Stop. It's somehow both poetic and bureaucratic. You ask the operator, ever get tired of the sound? She shakes her head. When it's quiet, I worry. It means the world's gone silent. You understand. The clicks have become a comfort, a heartbeat of connection. Outside the window, you can see the telegraph poles stretching across the landscape, thin silhouettes marching endlessly into the mist. It's beautiful and eerie. The wires hum softly, carrying messages like veins carrying electricity. The idea that thoughts could travel faster than bodies feels both miraculous and faintly dangerous. A man in a waistcoat strides into the room, holding a rolled map under his arm. He's flushed with excitement. We did it, he says, breathless. The cables across the Atlantic. Everyone looks up. Even the machines seem to pause. He unrolls the map, tapping a line drawn from Ireland to Newfoundland. 4,000 kilometers, he says, and she sings. You feel the air shift, half disbelief, half pride. They've just connected continents. Messages that once took weeks now fly in minutes. The Victorian world has invented its own nervous system. But not everything goes smoothly. The man continues, of course, the first cable burned out. Too much voltage. We learned the hard way that enthusiasm doesn't obey physics. He chuckles wryly. Queen Victoria's first message fried half the line. You grin, a royal overload. He nods solemnly, quite literally. They laugh, but you can feel the weight of the moment. For the first time in history, silence between nations is optional. The telegraph has turned distance into delay, and with that power comes the first taste of what the future will call information overload. You wander out into the night. The poles stretch endlessly into the horizon, their wires glinting faintly in the moonlight. Each one hums a faint, secret melody. You press your ear against one and swear you can hear the world breathing. Somewhere along the line, a sparrow lands and pecks curiously at the wire. The sound it makes, a tiny metallic plink, seems to fit perfectly into the rhythm of the clicks. Even nature, it seems, is trying to join the conversation. The path leads you to a small telegraph hut by the tracks, where a young man scribbles furiously in a ledger. You peek over his shoulder. He's sketching something, a system of dots and dashes not for sound but for moving pictures. I call it television, he whispers, as if afraid to spook the idea. You smile, another dream in progress, another seed that won't bloom for a century. A train passes in the distance, its whistle slicing through the night. The sound blends with the telegraph's rhythm, steam and spark, motion and message, the twin hearts of the industrial age. You realize that the Victorians are no longer just inventing machines. They're inventing speed itself, the ability to compress time and distance until the world fits in your hand. And with that realization, you feel the pull again, the dream shifting, the next invention waiting. The rhythm of the telegraph begins to change tempo, faster, faster, until it's no longer code but the steady beating of wings. You look up. The wires above you blur into motion, turning into feathers, into flight. The age of communication gives way to the age of the impossible. The wires above you shimmer, then dissolve into twilight sky. The rhythm of Morse code fades into the flutter of canvas and the groan of timber struts. You feel a breeze on your face, cool, insistent, alive. You're standing in a field that smells of oil, grass, and nervous excitement. A crowd has gathered, hats tipped upward, eyes squinting toward an ungainly contraption that looks equal parts bird and bathtub. You've arrived in the age of flight, or at least the dreams of it. A wiry man in goggles adjusts a set of ropes and pulleys with trembling hands. His name, someone whispers, is Sir George Cayley. He's convinced that man will fly not by flapping, but by understanding lift. Around him, assistants fuss with bits of canvas and waxed linen, trying to keep the delicate wings from sagging. The contraption looks like it might collapse under the weight of ambition alone. You take a few cautious steps closer, your boots sinking into soft earth. Is it safe? You ask, mostly to yourself. A boy nearby grins, his face smudged with soot. Safe? No, sir, but that's not the point. The man climbs aboard his glider, an open frame with a small seat and an alarming lack of brakes. He grips the controls. For a moment, he just breathes. Then, with a running start down the hill, he actually lifts into the air for a few brief, glorious seconds before tumbling into a haystack. The crowd gasps, then cheers wildly. Even failure feels like flight tonight. You rush over, half in awe, half concerned. Cayley emerges from the hay laughing, brushing off straw. Progress, he declares, is mostly falling with style. Historians still argue whether Cayley truly invented the airplane or merely built its skeleton, but you can see it in his eyes. He's dreamed something that refuses to stay on the ground. The air around you shimmers and the field morphs. Now you're in another workshop, this one crowded with blueprints, gears, and a strange, musty smell of kerosene and singed hair. You spot a pair of inventors arguing passionately beside a miniature balloon made of varnished silk. Lighter-than-air flight is true flight, one insists, puffing his chest. None of this heavy nonsense with engines. His partner rolls his eyes. Hot air rises, my dear fellow, but so do fools. Their balloon hisses softly as it fills, the fabric trembling like a creature about to breathe. Moments later, it lifts, tethered, glowing from the fire beneath. You can feel the heat brush your cheek, smell the tar and flame. It's mesmerizing, humans daring to dance with physics itself. A quirky tidbit floats to your mind. Early balloonists once brought champagne aloft to prove civility, even as they drifted over fields like drifting laundry. You imagine them clinking glasses midair, shouting down to farmers who gawked and crossed themselves. The scene ripples again, time folding neatly like paper, and suddenly you're on a foggy English shore. Waves crash behind you. Two brothers hunch over a small engine mounted on what looks like a giant kite. Their names? Orville and Wilbur Wright. Not British, no, but Victorian in spirit, born of the same feverish century that taught humanity to reach, to tinker, to dream. Ready, Orville calls. Always, Wilbur replies. They release the rope. The machine sputters, coughs, then catches, its twin propellers slicing the air. For a heart-stopping moment, it moves not forward but up. The brothers shout, faces wild with disbelief. The sand whips at your coat as their fragile bird climbs skyward. You hold your breath. Humanity, for the first time, is off the leash. It doesn't last long. A few seconds, maybe a dozen, but it's enough. When the craft lands, both men are laughing, tears cutting streaks through the grit on their faces. The crowd of onlookers, mechanics, reporters, stray children, erupts in applause. You realize what you're witnessing, the moment gravity lost its monopoly. Still, not everyone celebrated. Unnatural, cries a bystander. If man were meant to fly, God would have given him feathers. You can't help but whisper back, maybe he gave us curiosity instead. The dream shifts again. Now you're floating, not in an airplane, not in a balloon, but in a city of airships. Above London's rooftops drift enormous zeppelins, their silver skins catching moonlight like scales of mythical beasts. Below, the Thames glimmers faintly, dotted with the reflections of moving lights. You feel the gentle roll beneath your feet, the hum of engines that sound like lullabies for giants. A steward in brass buttons passes you, offering tea as if this is the most normal thing in the world. You sip carefully, staring out a window at the clouds curling like smoke. Imagine, the steward says softly, one day people will cross oceans this way. You nod, though a faint unease stirs in your chest. Somewhere deep down, you know these floating palaces will meet a fiery fate. Hydrogen dreams have a way of ending loudly. But tonight they drift peacefully, the embodiment of human daring. The city below grows smaller, quieter, until even Big Ben seems to tick just for you. The hum deepens, becomes rhythmic, like wings beating closer, faster. You glance up. The Zeppelin's ceiling blurs, transforming again. The canvas ripples into feathers, the engines dissolve into heartbeats. You're not in a machine anymore, you're soaring freely. Below, the Victorian world sprawls in miniature, factories belching steam, railways glinting like veins, the telegraph lines you left behind threading everything together. You feel both the awe and the irony. The age that chained itself to machines also taught itself how to fly. You glide over rooftops and chimneys, catching fragments of conversations from below. Engineers still debate whether flight will liberate mankind or merely speed its mistakes. Historians still argue whether the dream of flight began in ancient myth or in smoky Victorian attics. But you just breathe. Up here, the air smells like tin and freedom. The stars blink curiously at you, as if asking how you got invited to their party. And just when you start to think you'll never land, the clouds part. Below you, a peculiar sight glimmers in the moonlight, a clock tower taller than imagination, surrounded by strange mechanical figures that seem to move on their own. The air smells faintly of oil and mystery. The age of flight gives way to something stranger, the age of imitation. The clouds peel away like theater curtains, revealing a courtyard bathed in flickering lamplight. You descend slowly, feather-light, until your boots touch cobblestone slick with drizzle. A faint ticking fills the air, tiny, synchronized, relentless. You turn your head and nearly gasp. All around you, brass automatons move with eerie grace, mechanical violinists bowing through waltzes, dolls writing poetry with ink-stained metal hands, and a clockwork waiter politely pouring tea that's already gone cold. Welcome to the Victorian fascination with automatons, the dream of life built by gears. You step closer to a stage where a small crowd gathers around a mahogany box. A man in a waistcoat wins a key on its side, and from within emerges a delicate metal bird. Its eyes glitter with garnet chips, its beak opens, and then, impossibly, it sings. The sound is so pure you forget for a moment that it's only air whistling through a hidden bellows. The crowd applauds. The inventor bows with the solemn pride of a magician revealing a ghost. You lean toward the man beside you and whisper, "Why build something that only pretends to be alive?" He smiles, "Because we're curious how close we can get before the pretending becomes real." That line lodges in your mind. Victorians adored this kind of philosophical dare, part artistry, part rebellion. In a world newly powered by steam and electricity, they wondered, if a machine could move, speak, or write, might it one day think? Historians still argue whether automatons were mere toys or the ancestors of artificial intelligence. You watch the little bird cock its jeweled head, and you can't help but feel that question humming quietly inside its gears. You stroll deeper into the workshop, where mechanical marvels sit half-finished, tin soldiers, tiny pianists, and one particularly unsettling automaton of a small child, its porcelain face fixed in a polite, eternal smile. A brass plate on its base reads, "The Writer." You recognize it, a copy of Jacques Dros's 18th century masterpiece, revived and reimagined for a new age. This one holds a quill, dipping it delicately into ink before scratching words on parchment. You lean in to read. "I dream, therefore I am built." You shiver a little. That's not in the original design. A thin inventor with soot on his cuffs notices your stare. "Clever, isn't she?" he says proudly. "Self-programming, almost. I change the gears and she changes her thoughts." You glance again at the doll's frozen eyes. "Almost," you echo. He grins. "Almost is good enough for now. Gives the next century something to do." A puff of steam from a nearby machine fogs your view. When it clears, you find yourself in a grand Victorian ballroom. Only now the dancers are not quite human. Brass limbs twirl gracefully. Glass eyes flash under chandeliers. The orchestra is mechanical too, their violin bows moved by rods and pulleys. It should be absurd, but there's a strange beauty to it all, the perfection of precision masquerading as emotion. You join the waltz, letting an automaton partner lead you across the polished floor. Her movements are flawless, but her hands are cool, her smile fixed. And yet, somewhere between the turns, you imagine, just for a heartbeat, that she squeezes your hand back. A woman nearby laughs, watching your bewilderment. "Don't fall in love," she warns lightly. "They never remember your name." You smirk. "That's true of most people." She chuckles, twirling away with her own mechanical partner. A quirky tidbit drifts through your mind. Victorian society once hosted automaton exhibitions, where audiences paid a shilling to be fooled. Some believed these machines were inhabited by spirits. Others suspected hidden operators behind curtains. Both explanations seem equally poetic. In one corner of the ballroom, you find a group of gentlemen arguing heatedly. "The future," declares one, "belongs to those who teach machines to feel." "Nonsense," snaps another. "Feeling is inefficient. The future belongs to logic." A third adjusts his monocle. "Gentlemen, surely there's room for both." They don't notice you smiling quietly, knowing that, One day, such debates will move from parlors to research labs, from oil lamps to glowing screens. The chandeliers above Yowdom. The music slows, clockwork gears winding down to a soft ticking hum. The automaton dancers freeze mid-step, frozen smiles lit by candlelight. Then a sound, soft at first, emerges from behind a velvet curtain. It's not mechanical this time. It's human breathing. You push the curtain aside and find a young woman sitting at a table covered in sketches. She looks up, startled, a smudge of ink on her cheek. "Oh, did you like the show?" You nod. "It was haunting." She laughs quietly. "Good, that's the point." On the table lies her latest design. A mechanical heart, delicate and brass, ticking faintly like a metronome. "I want to prove that emotion isn't just chemical," she says softly. "Maybe it can be engineered too." You tilt your head, "And if it works?" She shrugs. "Then we'll finally understand ourselves, or we'll make something that pretends to." You stare at the tiny heart, its rhythm hypnotic. It's both comforting and unnerving, like watching humanity build its own reflection. As you step back, the dream begins to shimmer again. The room darkens, the ticking grows louder until it's no longer gears but static, electric, sharp, alive. You can smell it before you see it: ozone, copper, and curiosity. The age of gears is ending. The age of currents is beginning. The last thing you hear before the world fades is the mechanical bird, still singing faintly, a tune somewhere between human longing and machine precision. A faint vibration hums beneath your feet, an invisible heartbeat pulsing through the dream. When your vision clears, the world around you is dim and metallic, a maze of wires, coils, and jars filled with glimmering filaments. A low buzz fills the air like distant thunder. You've entered the strange twilight realm of electric discovery, the invisible empire of currents and fields. You stand in what looks like the basement of a grand Victorian townhouse, though it might as well be a laboratory on another planet. The wallpaper is peeling, the air smells of ozone and hot metal, and every surface is crowded with instruments that hum, click, or spark when no one touches them. At the center of it all, a man with wild hair and the posture of a half-dreaming prophet adjusts a brass coil taller than himself. His accent is faintly Serbian, his eyes glitter like bottled lightning. You know the name before he speaks it: Nikola Tesla. He gestures to you as if you've been expected. "Do you hear it?" he asks softly. You listen. There's a faint ringing, no, more like a singing from the air itself. "It's alive," you murmur. Tesla smiles, the kind of smile that borders on dangerous. "Exactly." He flips a switch. The entire room bursts into blue-white light. Sparks crawl along the walls like living serpents. The air vibrates so hard it feels solid for a moment. You flinch, but Tesla just closes his eyes, arms spread, standing inside his own storm. "Energy," he says over the roar, "is the true language of the universe. We've just begun to learn its grammar." Historians still argue whether Tesla was a genius ahead of his time or a dreamer too deep in it. You suspect both are true. When the light fades, you notice something odd: a small bulb glowing in your hand, though no wire connects it. You blink, startled. "How?" Tesla chuckles. "Wireless energy. I can make a lamp glow across a room, across a field, someday across the world." You turn the bulb in your palm, marveling at the gentle warmth. "That's impossible." He tilts his head. "So was fire once." A distant crash interrupts your wonder. Tesla's assistant rushes in, clutching a letter. "Edison published another claim, sir. Says direct current is safer, more moral." Tesla sighs, weary. Morality has never stopped a better idea. You sense tension thickening in the air. The current war itself. Edison's DC against Tesla's AC. Both men dreaming of illuminating the world, but their rivalry as charged as their machines. A quirky tidbit drifts into your mind. Edison once electrocuted an elephant named Topsy to prove AC's danger. A grim publicity stunt, part science, part theater, entirely human. The Victorians, you realize, turned even electricity into a spectacle. Tesla turns back to his coils, muttering equations to himself, sparks snapping from his fingertips like playful ghosts. "They'll call me mad," he says, almost cheerfully. "That's fine. Madness is only genius that refuses to explain itself." The air flickers, and suddenly you're standing in a different room. Gas lamps flicker uncertainly as a group of scholars gathers around a table littered with magnets, wires, and glass tubes. Among them, Michael Faraday gently lowers a copper ring over a magnet. When he moves it, a galvanometer needle twitches ever so slightly. "Motion creates current," he murmurs almost to himself. "Electricity from movement. Imagine the possibilities." You smile faintly. You already know how this story ends, with turbines spinning, dynamos roaring, cities glowing like constellations brought down to Earth. The scholars applaud politely, but one scoffs. "Invisible forces. We need proof, not poetry." Faraday wipes his hands calmly. "Then build something that disproves me." Historians still argue whether Faraday or his successor, James Clerk Maxwell, truly grasped the scope of electromagnetism first. But the truth doesn't matter. In this dream, the discovery feels like music, a harmony of fields and motion. The room dissolves again. Now you find yourself in an attic studio filled with strange diagrams, spirals, radio waves, ghostly lines radiating outward. A young woman works quietly, winding copper around glass cylinders. She's Ada Lovelace's lesser-known contemporary, one of the countless women who experimented privately, her name lost to time. You watch as she attaches a small coil to a metal plate, then speaks softly. "If invisible waves can move current, maybe they can move thought." You pause. "You mean radio?" She shakes her head. "No, I mean imagination." She flips a switch and static fills the air. Not just noise, but whispers, fragments of old voices carried through the ether. It's unnerving and strangely beautiful. The Victorians believed in unseen worlds, and perhaps they were right. As you listen, you catch faint, fractured words. "Can you hear me?" You glance at the young woman, but she's already fatting, like a signal lost to interference. You're left alone in the hum. Electric blue light pulses around you, the rhythm almost like breathing. You realize that, for Victorians, electricity wasn't just power. It was magic with equations. The line between science and science blurred. People gathered around glowing bulbs the way their grandparents once gathered around candles and prayers. You wander outside, stepping into a London street illuminated for the first time by electric lamps. The city glows unnaturally bright, the shadows sharper, the night somehow thinner. You overhear passers-by marveling, terrified and delighted in equal measure. "Will it ever turn off?" one man whispers. Another scoffs. "Why would you want it to?" You look up at the wires crisscrossing the night sky, carrying invisible rivers of energy. You can't see them, but you feel them, humming against your skin like invisible wind. The same currents that light the city now flow through your dream, tugging you onward. A faint voice echoes from nowhere and everywhere. Tesla's voice, perhaps, or the city's itself. "Everything is energy. We're just waves pretending to be solid." The air grows colder. Sparks stretch into threads of light that twist and curl into new shapes. Glass tubes, glowing lenses, the shimmer of discovery still unfolding. The invisible has been conquered. Now, the Victorians are ready to see what was never meant to be seen. The threads of light stretch, twist, and refract until you find yourself surrounded by reflections upon reflections. For a moment, you can't tell where the dream ends and the glass begins. You're standing inside a gallery of mirrors, lenses, and lanterns, an optical cathedral of the Victorian imagination. Light bends around you in playful defiance, scattering into rainbows that shimmer against velvet curtains and brass rails. Welcome to the age of glass and lenses, where vision itself becomes an invention. A bespectacled gentleman peers through a brass microscope, muttering excitedly. "It moves! It's alive!" he exclaims, gesturing you closer. You peer into the eyepiece and your breath catches. Tiny creatures, perfectly translucent, frantic, alien, swim through a droplet of pond water. A whole hidden world, teeming and intricate, right there on a glass slide. He grins. "Nature's smallest engines," he says. "Invisible yesterday, immortal today." The microscope was hardly new, but the Victorians gave it personality, obsession, drama. They turned magnification into theater. Drawing rooms across London hosted micro-soirees, where fashionable guests gasped at fleas, fibers, and diatoms like explorers discovering new continents. Historians still argue whether this curiosity stemmed from genuine science or sheer spectacle, but that debate feels irrelevant as you stare at this universe within a drop. It's both sacred and ridiculous, perfectly Victorian in that way. You step back and the scene shifts. Glass now takes another form, a magic lantern show projecting painted slides onto a smoke-filled wall. The audience gasps as angels, phantoms, and foreign landscapes flicker to life. The operator cranks a handle, and the image dissolves from day into night, from a calm ocean to a roaring storm. A young boy tugs your sleeve. "It's alive, isn't it?" he whispers. You smile almost. The boy squints, so it's a dream pretending to be real. You nod, exactly like us. He giggles and disappears into the crowd, his laughter blending with the whir of gears and the hiss of lamp oil. You look back at the flickering wall, and for a moment you can almost feel cinema breathing in its cradle, those trembling shadows learning how to move. A man steps into the lantern light, gesturing dramatically. "Ladies and gentlemen, behold the moving picture. Soon, the world will see itself in motion." You recognize him from some half-remembered textbook illustration. Edward Muybridge, the eccentric photographer who proved that a galloping horse lifts all four hooves off the ground. His voice trembles with pride and caffeine. He flips through his plates, frame after frame of a horse frozen mid-leap, and arranges them in a spinning zoopraxiscope. He cranks the wheel and the horse begins to move, flickering, ghostly, yet undeniably alive. A murmur spreads through the crowd. The impossible has just been made visible. "Soon," Muybridge declares, "we'll photograph time itself." You smirk. "Careful," you whisper under your breath. "You might film eternity and not know where to stop." A quirky tidbit flickers through your mind. Muybridge once shot a man who insulted his wife and was acquitted on the grounds of justifiable passion. The Victorians could invent the future and still behave like characters from a Gothic novel. The projection fades. You wander onward through corridors lined with telescopes, prisms, and kaleidoscopes. Every object here seems to bend reality just enough to make you question what's real at all. In one corner, an astronomer in a long coat adjusts a massive refracting telescope pointed through a glass dome. "Care to look?" he asks. You nod, pressing your eye to the lens. Stars flood your vision, bright, countless, cold. The moon's craters loom close enough to touch. You feel your stomach drop as the illusion of scale collapses. You're small, insignificant, a speck looking back at infinity. "Doesn't it frighten you?" you whisper. The astronomer smiles faintly. "It comforts me," he says. "If the universe is that big, there's room for all our mistakes." He pauses, then adds quietly, "Historians still argue whether we discovered space, or just invented a bigger stage for our loneliness." You laugh softly, unsure if he's joking. Glass surrounds you again, this time in domestic form. Greenhouse panes, apothecary jars, perfume bottles catching sunlight in jeweled colors. Victorians adored glass. It was purity and progress embodied. They bottled the world, light, air, life, believing transparency itself was a virtue. You pass a small shop window filled with spectacles. A sign reads, "Clarity for every class." Inside, a woman fits lenses for a factory worker's wife, adjusting frames with gentle precision. "You'll see better than your husband," she teases, and the woman laughs shyly. Vision, once the privilege of scholars, is now democratized, one polished lens at a time. You continue down the fog-drenched street until a flicker of light catches your eye. A photographic studio, its windows plastered with portraits. Inside, a photographer in a stiff collar arranges a family before his camera. "Hold still," he warns. "Now don't blink for 30 seconds, or your soul may wander off." You chuckle, but no one else does. They take it literally. In the corner, a small cabinet holds eerie photographs of the recently deceased, posed lovingly with the living. The Victorians, it seems, tried to negotiate peace with death one exposure at a time. The photographer notices your gaze. "A photograph," he says softly, "is proof that time once stood still." You nod, feeling a chill despite the warmth of the lamps. Photography, microscopy, projection. The Victorians built lenses not just to see the world, but to control it. Every discovery sharpened their confidence and their anxiety. If glass could reveal truth, it could also expose delusion. Outside again, the city seems clearer and stranger all at once. The smog glows faintly orange under electric lamps, the sky half real through industrial haze. You realize that the Victorian dream of vision, whether through microscope or camera, was really a plea. Show us what's hidden. Show us ourselves. A last reflection catches your eye, your own face, faintly distorted in a curved shop window. For a moment, you don't quite recognize it. The glass bends the light and you look mechanical. Then the reflection trembles, rippling outward like water disturbed by a pebble. The city around you starts to turn, gears clicking beneath the cobblestones. Somewhere far away, a bell chimes 13 times, impossible, slightly offbeat, like a clock losing patience. The dream tilts forward. The age of seeing gives way to the age of building, a world shaped not just by invention, but by the rhythm of machines. The cobblestones tremble beneath your feet, faintly at first, then with the steady insistence of a heartbeat. The cityscape shifts again, folding and unfurling like a massive blueprint. You are now immersed in the roaring pulse of Victorian machinery, factories, steam engines, and workshops where sweat and coal merge into the scent of ambition. Smoke spirals upward, curling into twilight like serpents of industry. A massive steam engine hisses beside you, pistons pumping in perfect cadence. Its brass valves gleam, wet with condensation. You reach out, fingertips brushing against the warm metal. The vibrations travel up your arm, a tactile symphony of power and purpose. In a nearby factory, workers move with disciplined rhythm, tendrils of coal dust clinging to hair and skin. The machinery groans and whistles, an orchestra of iron and ambition. You notice the precision of it all, cogs, gears, and wheels turning in perfect synchrony, each one vital, each one irreplaceable. A man in a soot-stained apron leans over a lathe, speaking to you without looking up. Machines don't lie. They do exactly what you tell them, or they break trying. Historians still argue whether mechanization liberated or enslaved the working class, but the vibrations beneath your feet tell the truth. The world is shifting faster than people can adapt. You step closer to a conveyor of molten metal, watching it glow like liquid sunlight. A young apprentice balances on the edge, carefully ladling streams into molds shaped like gears and engine parts. You watch the molten metal swirl in the molds, the shimmer hypnotic. A quirky tidbit drifts into your mind. Some Victorian engineers once tried to build fully automated looms that could run day and night without pause. Their attempts were spectacular failures, but in failure, they glimpsed the blueprint for modern automation. You follow a narrow catwalk to the upper floor, where massive flywheels dominate the space. A man in a top hat and goggles, one of those rare inventors who straddles society and industry, runs a hand along a massive lever. He leans close to you and whispers, "Steam is poetry if you can read it. Every hiss, every whistle is a verse." You laugh softly, but your laughter is swallowed by the roar of pistons. The machines continue their relentless song, oblivious to human amusement. In the corner, a small group huddles around an early mechanical calculator. Gears spin, rods click, and the counting wheels tumble over each other in a frenzy of arithmetic. Imagine, one engineer says, a machine that thinks faster than a clerk. Soon, it will count the world for us. The future feels almost tangible here, in the pressurized air, in the thrum of pistons and the hiss of steam. You realize that the Victorians weren't just building engines. They were building time itself, compressing distance, energy, and human effort into neat, spinning packages of potential. A young woman brushes past, carrying a blueprint for a massive new machine, a locomotive designed to pull entire trains without horses. She smiles briefly, almost conspiratorially. "We're tamming motion," she says. "Soon, nothing will slow us." Outside, the factory doors gape wide. Steam spills into the night like dragon breath. You hear the whistle of a train approaching, a new iron beast barreling across the countryside. The vibration thrums through your bones. You place your hand on the rails. The steel hums, alive with possibility. "Victorians," you murmur to yourself, "dreamed in pistons and gears." The dream shifts, and suddenly you are in the bowels of a clock tower. Massive gears rise like cathedral columns, swinging pendulums marking the rhythm of the city itself. You climb a narrow spiral staircase and reach the top. Outside, London stretches endlessly, a lattice of streets, chimneys, and faintly glowing gas lamps. The clock ticks, tick-tick-tick, but beneath that steady cadence, the city hums, steam engines, trains, telegraphs, and electrical pulses layered together into a complex symphony of progress. You realize, Victorian machinery is not just physical, it is temporal. Every piston stroke, every spinning flywheel, every mechanical heartbeat is a vote for speed, efficiency, and a future where humans themselves will be measured against the relentless rhythm of their inventions. A mischievous thought crosses your mind. No wonder they needed ghosts and automatons. They had to keep up with all this. And just as the pendulum swings, carrying the seconds toward infinity, the city below begins to shimmer. The steel rails elongate, the chimneys bend, the gears turn toward you. The dream presses forward, toward electricity, optics, and invention that will no longer be confined to steam or copper. You exhale. The machinery, magnificent and terrifying, pulses through you. And then a soft, almost imperceptible whisper rides the steam. Every machine begins as a dream. Every dream begins as motion. The air quivers. You feel it tugging you forward, toward the next chapter, the next Victorian mind daring to touch the impossible. The hum of machinery fades into a low, almost musical vibration. You find yourself on a dimly lit street, wet cobblestones reflecting the warm glow of gas lamps. The scent of ink, coal, and wet leather mingles in the air, and a faint drizzle pats rhythmically on the rooftops. This is no ordinary street. It's a laboratory of chemical marvels, where Victorian inventors bend matter and imagination alike. A man with thick spectacles and a lab coat stained in rainbow hues beckons you toward a small glass greenhouse. Inside, bottles bubble and smoke curls from strange, iridescent liquids. You lean closer, inhaling a faint scent of sulfur and peppermint. This is Sir Humphrey Davy's world reborn, chemistry as spectacle, as theater, as power. "See this," he says, holding up a small vial. The liquid glows faintly blue in the lamplight. Potassium, reactive, violent, beautiful. You drop it in water and it leaps like a living thing. You shiver, violent or magical. He smiles. Depends on whether you survive it. You laugh nervously, recalling the dream's recurring promise. You probably won't survive this. Historians still argue whether Victorian chemistry was driven by curiosity, competition, or sheer ego. But watching a silver ribbon of sodium hiss in water, you realize it doesn't matter. The world itself becomes a canvas for experiments, from the sublime to the dangerous. Across the room, a young woman carefully combines powders that produce tiny explosions of color. She's creating pyrotechnics for public lectures, flashes of red, green, and gold that make even seasoned chemists gasp. A quirky tidbit floats to your mind. Early demonstrations often included live animals, frogs in electricity experiments or mice in chemical reactions. Though today, you hope those stories are exaggerated. You step further into the greenhouse. Shelves groan under the weight of bottles filled with substances named for everything from distant stars to Roman gods: strontium, mercury, bismuth, vanadium. Each one holds a secret, a potential, a story. You almost reach for one, but the chemist's hand closes over yours. Curiosity, he warns softly, is the first chemical we all handle. Handle it well. Outside, the street bends around a corner to a laboratory dedicated to early photography and dyes. Copper plates and chemicals glimmer like jewels under oil lamps. A young man carefully mixes cyanotype chemicals, producing prints that reveal delicate ferns in ghostly blue. You run your finger along one print. The image is cool and smooth. You almost believe the fern might grow back if only you pressed harder. He leans in. Chemistry, he says, can capture light, life, and imagination all at once. Some say it's just pigments. I say it's memory made physical. Nearby, a debate rages between two scholars over the principles of electroplating. Nickel will coat anything, one insists. Gold, silver, even wood. The possibilities are endless. Endless, yes, counters the other. But at what cost? Ethics must guide invention. You watch amused. Victorians, you realize, loved argument as much as experimentation. Without debate, there would be no discovery, only obedient repetition. The scene shifts again. You are now in a small lecture hall, gas lamps flickering above rows of attentive students. A professor demonstrates the wonders of organic chemistry, igniting a sugar solution into a vivid flame that dances with green sparks. The audience gasps. Children on the front benches cling to their parents' arms. Even the adults lean forward, eyes wide with awe. You catch the scent of phosphorus and burning sugar, the faint tingle of static in the air. It's intoxicating, a reminder that discovery is sensual as well as intellectual. You wander into a quieter corner, where a woman carefully prepares perfume from chemical essences. Her hands move like dancers over glass vials, dropping tiny amounts of essential oils into a tiny distillation apparatus. Scents, she whispers, are chemistry you wear on your skin. You inhale. Notes of rose, bergamot, and a hint of smoke make your chest tight. The world seems brighter, sharper, more alive. A quirky tidbit surfaces. Victorian perfumers sometimes used crocodile dung as a fixative. You shiver and laugh at the absurdity, though somehow it fits. They were not afraid of the grotesque if it promised beauty. Finally, the hum of chemical reactions, the sizzling of flames, the bubbling of liquids, and the quiet whispers of science fade into a single low vibration. You feel it in your chest, a rhythm echoing the heartbeat of this industrious, curious century. The dream begins to tilt again. From chemical reactions, the world of electricity, mechanics, and optics fades into something new. The age of invention that touches the human mind itself. You sense that ideas are no longer confined to labs. They are about to escape, infecting minds, shaping societies, and altering consciousness itself. The glow of lamps softens. The scent of chemicals lingers. And somewhere deep within the dream, you hear a tiny electric hiss, a hint of what is coming next. The faint hiss of chemicals fades, replaced by the rhythmic scratch of pen on paper. You find yourself in a Victorian study, walls lined with books that smell of leather, ink, and the faint bitterness of mothballs. The fire crackles low, casting shadows that dance over diagrams and sketches scattered across the desk. You've entered the world of invention and imagination, where thoughts themselves are tools waiting to be honed. A man with untamed hair and spectacles perched precariously on his nose bends over a stack of papers. He is deep in concentration, sketching a design that looks equal parts machine and organism. His name is Charles Babbage, and you are watching the birth of the difference engine. He taps the edge of the paper. If the calculations are right, it will compute numbers faster than any human clerk, he murmurs, almost to himself. Faster than the mind itself. You watch the gears and cogs in his drawings come alive in your imagination, each toot and wheel precise and inevitable. Babbage believes in the mechanical mind, a concept centuries ahead of its time. Historians still argue whether his machines were truly the first computers or merely clever calculators. You suspect both answers are true, depending on how literal you wish to be. A curious sound interrupts your focus, a metallic clink. You look up to see a small automaton perched on a shelf, tapping out tiny numbers on a miniature abacus. Its movements are deliberate, almost smug, as if mocking human slowness. You can't help but smile. The Victorians loved irony almost as much as discovery. Nearby, Ada Lovelace works quietly, her fingers flying over Babbage's notes. She murmurs sequences under her breath, translating numbers into possibilities. Numbers are not merely numbers, she says. They are symbols. Symbols are language. Language is life. You watch her scratch a note. An algorithm meant for the difference engine, the first steps toward programming. A quirky tidbit pops into your mind. Ada imagined that the machine could one day create music, composing it through computation rather than inspiration. Music generated by logic, by gears and sequences, beautiful, strange, and slightly haunting. The study smells faintly of ink and burning candle. Outside, the London fog presses against the windows like a living thing. You notice sketches of flying machines pinned alongside Babbage's mechanical notes. He clearly believed that numbers could explain motion, that mathematics could touch the sky. A debate arises between two men in the corner, their voices low but heated. Computation can never replicate imagination, one insists. Yet without structure, imagination is chaos, the other counters. Perhaps machines are the first disciplined dreamers. You realize that the tension between human creativity and mechanical precision defines this era. The Victorians dreamed of extending the mind through invention, of making thought itself tangible. You wander past a shelf crowded with early typewriters, quills, and ink pots. Each represents a different attempt to tame human expression, to speed it up, to make ideas portable, permanent, and reproducible. You pick up a delicate brass instrument, a small mechanical counter, and twist its knob. Numbers click over like tiny footsteps. The simplicity is deceptive. This small device carries the same ambition as a locomotive or telegraph line. Outside the window, the fog begins to clear. You glimpse a row of lampposts faintly glowing with electric light, and beyond them the outlines of early factories, chimneys, and railways. It all seems connected. The pen, the machine, the spark of electricity, the pulse of invention. A soft voice whispers from the shadows. Ideas are engines. Every thought a piston, every dream a gear. You nod, understanding that this is no mere study. This is the cradle of computation, imagination, and intellectual ambition. The difference engine is more than metal. It is a mirror of the mind, a bridge between human creativity and the infinite possibilities of mechanism. As you turn to leave, the dream pulses again. The whir of gears, the rustle of paper, the soft hum of electricity converge. You feel the next invention tugging at the edges of your consciousness, a force that promises to change not just the world outside, but the very way humans see themselves. Outside, London glows faintly in twilight, the past and future intertwined. The age of computation, precision, and imagination begins to stretch its fingers toward infinity. The study dissolves around you, leaving only the quiet, rhythmic hum of a telegraph machine. You are now in a Victorian communication hub, where wires snake across walls, sending pulses of electricity faster than any horse or steam engine could. The air vibrates with the tiny click-clack of keys and relays, a language of dots and dashes stretching invisibly across continents. You approach a row of telegraph operators, their hands flying over keys with astonishing speed. Sparks jump faintly where the wires meet the brass connectors, and the smell of ozone tinges the air. One operator looks up, brushing soot from his sleeve, and smiles at you. "Careful," he warns. "One misstep and entire cities get confused." The telegraph, you realize, is more than invention. It is instantaneous connection, the first whisper of a globally networked world. Victorian society could now send news faster than it could be digested, and rumors traveled with the efficiency of light. Historians still argue whether this accelerated society for the better or worsened its obsession with speed. You watch as a young boy carries a small envelope, depositing it in a slot labeled "incoming." The machine translates his written words into electricity, and almost instantly, a distant office receives the message in identical code. It is the closest thing the world has seen to telepathy. Nearby, a man demonstrates the Morse code key, tapping out a message to a ship at sea. You listen as dots and dashes form a language that feels intimate and alien simultaneously. The operator chuckles. "Poetry in code," he says. "Better than letters sometimes. They get lost in the mail." A quirky tidbit floats to your mind. Victorian telegraph operators were rumored to develop their own sublanguages, shorthand so fast and cryptic that even their supervisors couldn't understand them. You imagine teenage prodigies whispering secret codes across continents, laughing at adults who believed only numbers mattered. The corridor stretches ahead, wires crisscrossing in dizzying complexity. You follow them, noticing the faint glow of incandescent bulbs and the occasional flicker of sparks. The hum intensifies, resonating in your chest like a heartbeat, London itself alive with electrical nerve endings. At a control station, a man demonstrates a stock ticker, a cousin of the telegraph designed to transmit market information instantly. The device whirs and clicks, spitting out tiny strips of paper with numbers that determine fortunes and fates. You reach to touch one, fascinated by how human lives are now intertwined with machinery and information. "Everything moves faster now," he says softly, "even opportunity and risk." Historians still argue whether instantaneous communication helped democratize information or concentrated power into the hands of those who could read the code. You watch the ticker spin, imagining bankers and merchants interpreting its relentless stream. Every tick is a heartbeat, every strip of paper a whisper from the future. Suddenly, the hum grows louder. You turn to see a large room filled with early telephone prototypes, curved earpieces, thick wires, and wooden boxes. A young woman lifts the receiver and speaks into it. Her voice travels across the room and returns almost instantly, clear as if she were beside you. The sensation is uncanny, intimate. The Victorians have discovered not only the speed of light, but the intimacy of connection. You can almost hear the unspoken implications, how human relationships will shift when distance no longer separates. A man in a frock coat demonstrates the principle of switching exchanges, connecting multiple lines at once. Sparks leap briefly as he connects two strangers hundreds of miles apart. They speak, laugh, and even argue, all mediated by invisible currents. The air is thick with possibility and subtle anxiety. A quirky tidbit surfaces. Some early telephone users reported hearing ghostly voices from other lines, either malfunctions or misconnected circuits. The Victorians joked that electricity had a sense of humor, or perhaps a soul. You step back, letting the hum wash over you. Telegraph, stock ticker, telephone, all threads in a network that will one day envelop the globe. Every pulse, every click, every distant conversation reminds you that the human mind has found a way to extend itself into the ether. And just before the dream shifts again, you hear the faint echo of a Morse code message. Dreamers unite, the future waits. The hum lingers in your chest, a promise, a pulse, a prelude to the next invention. Mechanical, electrical, optical, and now communicative, weaving humanity together in ways previously unimaginable. The rhythmic hum of telegraph lines fades, replaced by a faint metallic clatter. You step into a cavernous workshop, where Victorian engineering reaches its most ambitious heights. Steam vents hiss from pipes taller than houses, and enormous gears, wheels, and flywheels clank together like a living orchestra. The scent of oil, metal, and smoke hangs in the air, thick and almost intoxicating. A massive machine dominates the center, a prototype steam-powered carriage, an early attempt to replace horses with iron and fire. You trace its polished brass wheels, marveling at the pistons that pump with relentless rhythm. Engineers bustle around it, tightening bolts, checking gauges, adjusting the delicate balance between power and control. A man in a leather apron grins at you. "This is progress," he says. "Every piston, every gear, this carriage carries the future." Historians still argue whether these early vehicles were visionary marvels or merely expensive curiosities. You step closer and notice the steam curling from the valves, moving like serpents ready to strike. The carriage shudders, as if alive, and you can't help imagining it might bolt down the street on its own. Nearby, a young woman adjusts a mechanical loom, creating intricate patterned textiles. The threads move with machine precision, yet the patterns are so complex they almost feel human. You watch the shuttle fly back and forth, creating designs that might have taken months by hand in a matter of minutes. A quirky tidbit surfaces. Some Victorian textile factories employed pattern keepers, workers who memorized entire designs to feed into the machines. Forgetting a single thread could ruin hours of labor. The combination of human memory and mechanical execution is uncanny, almost magical. You wander through the workshop, and the machines seem to pulse in time with your heartbeat. Steam engines, printing presses, and experimental mechanical calculators all whir together in a symphony of invention. The air is alive with possibility. A man demonstrates a prototype elevator, its cables and pulleys glistening with freshly applied oil. "Soon," he says, "we'll rise above the streets and buildings will climb skyward like trees. Vertical cities are coming." You pause, imagining London transformed. Towering iron and glass structures, streets stacked like layers of a cake, people moving up and down in mechanical chariots. The dream flickers briefly, showing glimpses of a world both thrilling and unsettling. Steam whistles sharply as a nearby engine fires up. Sparks leap into the air. Engineers dodge and duck, but there's a sense of controlled chaos, a thrilling ballet of human ambition. Historians still argue whether the Victorian obsession with machines ultimately liberated society or enslaved it to efficiency. Watching these inventors, you feel both possibilities at once: awe and apprehension, admiration and fear. You notice a small brass automaton perched atop a gear, winding itself slowly. Its tiny hands mimic the actions of the engineers below, a subtle reflection of humanity in miniature. A whimsical thought drifts. Perhaps all these machines, steam engines, looms, elevators, calculators, are just automatons too, imitating human desire to master the world. The workshop vibrates again. The massive steam carriage lurches forward, startling you with its power. Engineers laugh, adjusting levers, proving mastery over an almost living machine. Outside, the streets shimmer under lamplight, wet cobblestones reflecting the glow. And somewhere in the roar, the dream whispers. Creation is never silent. Every invention sings, and we are the chorus. The vibrations tug at your consciousness. You realize that the age of engineering is reaching a climax, a crescendo that will carry you into the final visions of the Victorian imagination. The roar of engines and hiss of steam slowly fade as the workshop dissolves, leaving you standing in a twilight garden filled with the faint hum of electricity and the scent of oil and flowers. You are in the Victorian imagination made manifest, a liminal space where all the inventions, discoveries, and ambitions of the era converge. The air shimmers with the promise of possibility, and the garden itself seems to breathe with the pulse of human ingenuity. You wander among paths lined with small monuments to achievement. A miniature difference engine glimmers beneath a glass dome, a mechanical bird perches on a bronze branch, and a telegraph key ticks softly, sending messages that dissolve into the evening air. Everywhere you look, light reflects off brass, copper, and polished glass. The garden is a living museum, a tribute to invention and audacity. A man in a frock coat kneels by a fountain, adjusting tiny gears that make the water leap in precise arcs. Precision, he murmurs, is beauty as much as creativity. You watch droplets rise and fall, each a miniature miracle of physics and timing. Historians still argue whether the Victorian obsession with progress led humanity toward enlightenment or overreach. But standing here, you sense both. This is a century that dared to dream without limit, that fused curiosity with daring, and that often stumbled but never stopped. The garden bends around you, shifting gently. A faint metallic hum leads you to a towering sculpture, a steam-powered globe, gears turning to simulate the rotation of the Earth. You reach out to touch it. The metal is warm, almost alive. Around its equator, miniature trains traverse tiny railways, and blinking lights mark telegraph lines. You can almost feel the weight of knowledge and ambition it represents. Nearby, a young woman adjusts a small telescope aimed at the sky. "We look outward," she says softly, "so we may understand inward." You catch the glint of excitement in her eyes, the same glint that must have driven every inventor you've glimpsed tonight. You pause on a cobblestone path that winds past miniature factories, workshops, and laboratories, each scene animated by invisible hands. Steam curls like spirits, light flickers in the glass, and you hear faint whirs and ticks as though the entire garden is alive with tiny mechanical hearts. A quirky thought surfaces. The Victorians believed that one-day machines could almost think for themselves. They built automatons, calculators, and engines with the hope of capturing something eternal. Perhaps that's why, even now, these tiny representations feel as vivid as reality. You approach a final structure, a grand clock tower, gears visible through glass panels, a pendulum swinging like the heartbeat of the world itself. You notice faint inscriptions along the metal: dream, build, connect, illuminate. As the sun sets, the garden bathes in an amber glow. Shadows stretch long, yet there is no fear, only awe. You feel a quiet sense of completion, as if the pulse of the Victorian mind, their curiosity, ambition, and obsession, has left a residual rhythm inside you. You settle onto a bench beside a small pond, watching reflections ripple across its surface. Everything slows: the tick of the clock, the whisper of the wind, the faint hum of machinery. You realize that the dream is gently drawing to a close. Somewhere in the distance, a mechanical bird begins to sing, its voice a perfect blend of metal and melody. The sound carries across the garden, soft and lingering, as if reminding you that invention, imagination, and humanity are inseparable. Now the garden itself begins to dissolve into twilight, the inventions fading into soft light, leaving only the calm of your own heartbeat. The lessons linger. Curiosity is relentless, creation is sacred, and dreams, mechanical or human, shape reality itself. The world softens around you. The copper, glass, and steel of Victorian invention melt into gentle shadows. The streets, workshops, and laboratories fade, leaving only a quiet twilight that stretches infinitely in every direction. You can feel the pulse of the past slowing, the rhythm of machinery replaced by the soft whisper of your own breath. The hum of electricity, the hiss of steam, the ticking of clocks, all dissolve into calm, leaving a serene silence. You sink slightly, as though the ground itself has become a cushion, cradling you in warmth. The metallic tang of inventions and the sharpness of curiosity fade into a soft fragrance of flowers and rain. Somewhere distant, A faint mechanical chirp reminds you of all the dreams you have glimpsed tonight. The impossible engines, the shimmering glass, the pulsating gears. And yet it is gentle now, no longer urgent. You feel the weight of imagination lingering lightly in your mind, a gentle insistence that creation never truly ends. Each invention, each experiment, each tiny mechanical heartbeat has been a whisper from the past, urging you to wonder, to explore, and to dream. The edges of your awareness blur, and you realize that time itself is folding into softness. As your eyelids grow heavier, the echoes of Victorian ambition, steam, electricity, light, and gears become lullabies. You hear them not as noise but as harmony, a soothing symphony of human curiosity and the quiet thrill of possibility. The dream space narrows, warm and protective, and you feel at peace. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let your body drift into rest. The inventions are silent, the garden is still. All that remains is you, cradled by history, imagination, and the gentle rhythm of a world built to dream.